Okay, Bob is upstairs working on it.
Yeah. All right, we're good. He just gave us the sign. There we go. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for December 14th, 2022. Welcome, everybody. And the first item, or second item of business is privilege of the floor. I do have one blue card. And I'd invite Tom Knipe to come up and speak to the IDA.
Is this a good spot here?
It is.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Thank you all for your service to the board and support for economic development in our community. I'm here today to speak with you about the Shared Kitchen Ithaca project and to request your support and consideration of use of IDA fund balance to support this vital economic development project in our community. What is the Shared Kitchen Ithaca project? It's been known for years that we have a gap in our local food product manufacturing system here, which is we don't have a space that small operators can go to scale their business by having access to a properly licensed, properly outfitted commercial kitchen that has the right equipment and the right support to support small entrepreneurs in the food space here. And so seeing this as a need through the study that we did with many of our partners, including IAED, around small-scale manufacturing, and then leading to last February identifying funding through the IURA and a consultant to help us with a feasibility study, we kind of looked into two main questions. If we were to build such a facility, would there be demand? And if we were to operate such a facility, would it pencil, right? Would it work financially? We published that study in September of this year. Answers to both of those questions were a clear and resounding yes. And I provided that study to you. We've provided it to a number of folks in this space, including folks at the Cornell Food and Technology or Food Venture Center. There's a lot of interest in this. Pull out one quote from the inspector locally from USDA, Mike Wolf, who when he looked at this space said, this is an absolutely ideal space for something like this. Many communities would kill for a space like this. What's the space I'm talking about? It's the former commissary kitchen at Green Star, which has 3-phase power, 2 commercial hoods, adequate space, loading docks, walk-in cooling and freezing. Again, any community would kill for a space like this. We have an opportunity right now to turn this into a facility that's going to support real economic development in our community, that supports job growth and sales growth in what is a key sector as identified by the County Economic Development Strategy, by the draft IAED 5-year organizational plan. And so I'm, as Deputy Director for Economic Development of the City of Ithaca, fully in support of all the projects that have been discussed so far for use of IDA fund balance and involved directly with 2 of them, the Gateway Signage Program and Southworks, and look forward to, ongoing work on those projects. Would ask you to consider funding at the level of $100,000 to $150,000 for the Shared Kitchen Ithaca project, which would allow the project to purchase equipment and get into that space. We could lose the space, frankly, to another potential lessee. The current landlords, we're in touch with them, and we believe that we can pull this together within the next few months if we get an influx of funding. So we're asking for your consideration, and I thank you. And please follow up if you have other questions. We got a slide deck, and we can answer any questions you have. Probably not me, the best person. Rod Rotundi, the consultant, is probably the best person to answer a lot of those questions.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who wishes to? Oh.
Can we ask questions of Tom?
I guess I think we can set up our own rules for the special meeting. Typically, we would not. We just receive public comment. But given that's bang on point with what we're trying to talk about today. But before we do that, I know that Danielle Szabo is with us today as well, and she has some information on the Southworks project, and maybe we could give her a few minutes as well, if you'd like to come forward.
So I would just add, if I may, Danielle Szabo is IAED's Director of Workforce Innovation. I had been asked to provide some recommendations for funding to this body, and I did provide 3 recommendations. One of those was $500,000 for the, now they're calling it Southworks project, to support the tech transfer space and feasibility around that, so that we have a landing pad for startup companies to stay and grow their companies here in Ithaca and Tompkins County. We have since had a number of conversations with the project developer, Shift Capital, and their team, as well as Danielle, and we have been putting together more information regarding that funding request, whereby half of the funding would be to support this tech transfer feasibility study and equipment. The other half would support a construction training program that has been the subject of several conversations and is sort of moving forward in a quick time frame between Shift Capital, one of their partners in the project, U.S. Sealing Corporation, a company called Livingston Associates out of Rochester, as well as TST BOCES right here in Ithaca for a pre-apprenticeship program. We were not able, we just didn't have time to put together a full scope and proposal for this meeting, and I would like to do that for a future meeting or the next meeting. But Danielle is here and she's able to talk about that construction piece. So thanks.
And just for a few minutes, this would be, I think, really helpful to us. And why don't you come up, and with the permission of the agency members, maybe Tom could just come up and sit at the table. We don't have a crowd with us today, if you both want to come up, so you can answer questions. And Heather, thanks for your comments. I would just offer Career Pathways as well has been a participant in moving this idea forward. So this would dovetail with what they've been trying to do. So anyway,
Is there a preference for where you'd like me to sit?
why don't you sit right at the end so everybody can see you?
I'm a visual learner, so I'm just passing out. This is a draft, it's a working document. But to me, as a visual learner, sometimes it's easier to look at something and how it's going to come together. So let's get into it. So just to add to what Heather is kind of explaining, we have been looking to build a construction trades industry partnership, which would build career readiness pathways into apprenticeships, but as well as working with other training partners to create other career readiness pathways into the actual construction trades, which would be non-union related. So this model essentially would tie into the larger direct-to-work initiative that we are working to build here through Tompkins County, which is looking to build a strategic recruitment strategy as well as a very targeted assessment process to help prepare people before entering one of the targeted industries, and then a community remediation plan for those that may not be ready to transition into some type of training or into direct employment. So I just want to preface that because this is what the bottom is talking about. It's kind of that a recruitment, assessment, and remediation process, but as people are going through this in the construction trades industry partnership, there would be one of 2 training pathways, and this is what we're looking to build. The green side would be with TST BOCES. And right now, TST BOCES has revived their youth construction training program, and they are in the process of hiring a construction instructor. The one thing with BOCES funding, regardless of what county, is that funding looks different for our adult learners. So to be able to help support BOCES, we want to build a parallel track which would allow adult learners, meaning anyone 18 years and older that is not in the K through 12 system, to go through a construction training program and lead into direct employment. With that, over time, we can look to sustain costs through the Workforce Development Board and get that on the eligible training provider list to help with tuition costs and work with Tompkins Workforce to embed that tuition. That'd be the long-term sustainability pathway for that.
Just to be clear, that's New York State money?
That would be WIOA, so that's federal.
Okay.
Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding. And every county gets WIOA funding, and that's what the Workforce Development Board uses to administer programming in each county. So very often, we've had a lot of success leveraging that funding to help BOCES build training programs. So that's the long-term sustainability. The other side of it is these new models that are coming out through New York State, which are pathways to apprenticeships. And several local communities are starting to build these, and it's working with your local trades council. So IAD has been in active conversations with our trades council to figure out how can we create a pre-apprenticeship pathway to get people ready to go into these apprenticeships. So we would be working with the trades council to create a paid pre-apprenticeship where we would be using curriculum that is nationally recognized through the North American Building Trades Council. And we would do career readiness as well as exam preparation and industry exposure into all of the available apprenticeships across the union. And that would be the other inclusive pathway within the construction trades industry partnership. So with that, in the proposal would be to help use flexible capital to pay those participants to go through that pre-apprenticeship.
Thank you. And I guess I just add to that, I mentioned career pathways, and that's a collaboration among a whole bunch of community agencies, OAR, URO, Finger Lakes Reuse, Cornell Cooperative Extension, and if a graphical learner, they're all down in this space.
That's correct.
That's getting these people ready to move up. And what I think is exciting about what we're talking about here is the ability for the next decade to have a steady series of well-paying opportunities coming out of this so that we could really create almost a school ongoing while Southworks is getting built out. Which,
the other point I wanted to add as a proposal to the IDA, it would help tie into the local labor policy. We would locally be training community residents, skilling them up, and encouraging not just our unions, but other local construction programs to take community residents to hire them for these ongoing economic development projects that are going on here.
Great. Questions for either Danielle or Tom?
Can we maybe sort ourselves into like talk about one and then the other so we can stay a little bit more sort of organized?
All right. Why don't we continue with what Danielle was talking about, and then we'll come back to Tom.
I have a question. Can I?
Yeah.
So I've heard about similar programs from a couple of other local nonprofits, specifically Black Hands Universal and Unbroken Promises Initiative. I'm curious if you're aware of their efforts and how this relates to what they're doing.
So I've been in ongoing conversations with Jordan and George, knowing that they both have a passion to engage with the construction trades. Essentially, we would work to do a job readiness component, and they would be more on the front end with the recruitment assessment. And then there could be a remediation component to it. If they have clients that are interested in going to construction, how can we build math remediation programs before transitioning into one of these pathways, whether it's the pre-apprenticeship or direct employment with the construction workers.
And who would be the actual like recipient? Like if we were to fund something like this, like where's that money go? Like is this flowing to those nonprofits? Is this flowing to IAED or like where's the?
So I think this is where Heather and I would need to flesh out more in the larger proposal with the two sides of this. Essentially the $250,000 towards the workforce. Half of it would be split to do the program development and startup costs for the TST BOCES, which is the non-union or non-apprenticeship pathway. And then looking at the other flexible capital to help lend a stipend to active participants that are in the pre-apprenticeship side of things. Also, there might be a cost, and this is where I have to dig in deeper with the Trades Council, the cost of curriculum, cost of rent for a classroom, cost of space for equipment. Those are some things that I would need to work over the next month on to kind of figure out what the budget breakdown would be for the proposal. But essentially, it would be program development and startup costs.
And as we build out these this programming, our ultimate goal in every sector that we're building these partnerships and these pathways is to find a local area, not-for-profit or other agency where these programs would be embedded. It is not our intention to manage and run these programs out of IAED. So, you know, for a manufacturing partnership, there may be one entity that would be the likely place to embed that program. For the construction program as well, some other entities. So we're sort of the collaborator, the connector, helping to get it up and running, identify all of the supports that need to go in, who can provide those supports, and then it would be embedded in another entity.
And I mean, can you give me just a little bit more on like what the connection with Southworks is? It feels like it's gotten, like this was like, we were talking about $500,000 for Southworks for a tech transfer space, which is a little fuzzy. And now we're talking about $250,000 for BOCES. Are we talking about building a program that's located at Southworks, or they're consuming the construction labor? There's some kind of agreement they would do that, or like what's the?
We are talking about a program that would be housed at Southworks in one of the existing buildings. BOCES does not currently have the space available to start back up their construction training program. The location is a good location because it's close to downtown. It's accessible to transportation services for training and individuals that might live in the city or outside of the city to come in and participate in training.
And we're going to have a presentation on the Southworks project as well as part of our next meeting. Yeah.
So just to clarify then, Heather, so your $500,000 request for Southworks is separate from this request then, right? It's not included in that.
So what I'd look to do is just sort of all I did was provide some recommendations, and that recommendation was about a paragraph. Yes, we could certainly use $500,000 to support equipment and feasibility around this tech transfer space that we have been talking about for almost 3 years now. The IDA did fund an initial part of this study. What I would propose to do is to split that and use $250,000 for that project and $250,000 for this project. And the reason being is because we've had several conversations, and the construction training program is, hitting sort of a critical mass to where we're ready to really move forward with it. And, it's something that everyone is engaged in and thinks is really important in this community.
I know this answer to this question, but I sit on the IAED, and I know we're going through that program too. How is that connected? Is it connected? Is it the same? Is it just focused on a different sector? If you can at least for my information, connect that together.
So I think it's just the ongoing conversation. These are not programs. What I presented at the IAD board is the framework for the workforce initiative. And this is the clarification. It's initiative because it's connecting existing program that is already provided by our educational partners and an ongoing gap analysis of what is needed in response to workforce needs. And essentially right now we started with manufacturing, where there was a need to build an entry-level program to get people into entry-level manufacturing jobs. So we have done that in partnership with Alliance for Manufacturing and Technology, and we have worked to get that on the eligible training provider list through the Workforce Development Board and tie tuition costs so people can get registered and go through Tompkins Workforce to take that pathway into manufacturing. Regardless of the industry that a community resident wants to go through, there will be an ongoing recruitment, assessment, and referral and remediation process. But the training components of each of the industries will look different because we have to leverage existing partnerships and programs. So this is where we are working with both BOCES to help support and revamp the adult construction program for them, because they currently don't have the startup funding for that. And we know that we want to tie that to direct jobs, but then also in our ongoing conversations with the Trade Council, we want to make sure that we are working on a recruitment effort to help build pre-apprenticeship, which would then tie into their apprenticeship programming. So it is not one program. Direct to Work is not a program. It is an initial framework to build a workforce ecosystem or a workforce initiative here in Tompkins County.
I guess I'd just jump in with a comment that, part of our mission is job creation, and we tend to do that incidentally, that we're approving projects that have jobs attached to them. But this would be far more of a hands-on direct approach to saying, these are the jobs we need in our community. We are lacking these trades, and we build that capacity as this project needs those trades too. So I think there's some really good reasons for us to think about this. Yeah, John.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that it's pretty well understood that there's a huge gap. These are good paying jobs, and that I think there's a misalignment between people who need an opportunity to get a leg up and where they can kind of get on that ladder. So I think this is a really excellent program or concept, I guess I'll say. I think that one of the things that we often hear as feedback here in terms of how we administer incentives, and I want to consider this when we're thinking about our fund balance, is the sort of efficiency of how that happens in terms of delivering the incentives that people actually need it the most, rather than sort of indirectly or directly primarily benefiting people who don't really need it. And so I think that one of the things that we'll want to consider when we're looking at this is what the big picture of the budget looks like. And if, for instance, Shift is a player, it's like, are they going to charge, a high market rent for the space because now they can get it now that we've dumped this money into this program? Or are they going to be, looking for something a little bit more reasonable because they see the benefits of, the impact of this program overall, and other things like that, where it's like, are we actually really efficiently delivering this money in a way that really directly benefits those that need it the most? And so I think as you're sort of further developing this, if you could try to make sure that that's well communicated in, whatever comes back to us in terms of a proposal, I think that'll make it much easier for all of us to support. And I think this is an exceptional, this is exactly the kind of thing we need. So I could see supporting it substantially.
Any other questions or comments on this proposal? Shauna.
I have two questions. The first one is, how much would the developer be paying into the concept?
The site developer?
Yeah.
So once again, and maybe Heather can jump in on this, just to clarify, this would be to develop the industry partnership, so the workforce development, the training component of it, not the actual development, the development of the actual training site that would be at Southworth.
Would they be contributing to it?
So, Shift, I'm trying to think of where Vicky is. So Vicky on Shift is currently in the process of applying for a state grant and is working with those partners on an application for site development. So they are investing in the actual development of it. I'm working with the training partner to secure startup costs to do program development. And essentially it would be two programs or two pathways, because it's not just working with TST BOCES to develop one type of program, it would be also working with the Trades Council to build a pre-apprenticeship training program that would align to their apprenticeship needs as well.
I mean, I think it would be really wonderful if we could do some type of matching so that it's not just our contribution, but we have partners at the table and stakeholders that have an interest in a similar interest. And then my second comment / question is that it would be really great if we had some written information coming to our next meeting. I'm assuming we'll vote on it at our next January meeting?
Well, I think we should talk about that, because maybe we need to do more homework before we get there, and this might even be the subject for a subcommittee, just because we get one shot at this, and we probably want to be really confident that this is going to work. And I agree with you that it is more complex, that you don't want the developer to get a free ride here. They're going to get real benefit out of this too. They should be investing too. So yeah, yes, I think we need more information, but how we get it, I think we have to talk about. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Todd.
Excuse me, Danny. So this isn't just like for this particular project, right? This is just something that's going to continue to try to help all the businesses recoup
Correct.
for future?
Yeah, I mean, this would be to establish the actual construction trades industry partnership, which would create inclusive pathways into apprenticeships or union jobs versus the non-union. And it's working with multiple training providers, such as the Trading Council, to figure out the pre-apprenticeship pathway, and then also working with TST BOCES and other community partners to figure out how to build up that pathway into non-union positions. But this would be ongoing. Essentially, the funding that we're asking for from the IDA would to help do startup costs and program development to build the industry partnership. Over time, if there's success, it should generate revenue. It should be able to sustain on its own.
Great, thank you.
Jeff?
So just to clarify that point then, because I think a few of us have asked, does it benefit the developer? From what I heard from you, it doesn't. They're just going to provide us space, and we're providing this program or doing this program that will ultimately benefit the community, right? I mean, so it's no benefit to the developer or anything like that. They're going to be providing space then, right?
That's how I would view it, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think it depends on the terms of the lease, right? Like a great tenant is a substantial benefit to any developer. And depending on how
Understood.
favorable those terms
Understood.
are, and that's sort of
Right.
like where that my earlier question kind of came from,
Right.
right? If those terms are, reasonable and perhaps even slightly discounted, sort of because they see the benefit of this thing existing in the community that they're playing in and what that's going to mean for them, I could see that being an easier thing to support than if they're high market. Right.
No, I understand. I think I was just trying to understand, okay, what is their position? It's really them just being a landlord in this
Right.
situation, right? Providing a space, and this program's got to decide, okay, what's the fair market value, or are they going to your point, going to give us a discount? So, well, give the program a discount on it, that type of stuff, but, okay.
Yeah, and I guess I have a clarifying question then, because it seems like the great advantage here is you've got this gigantic project that's going to get built out for the next decade, and they need tradespeople, skilled tradespeople, that there would be jobs sitting next door to this. And so there would be a benefit to the developer that there would be capable people there to do the work that they need done, and there would be jobs for those people. So that's,
But we have to remember that they need subcontractors to bid on all of that work. They're not going to be directly hiring
No, I
individual
understand.
tradespeople. They're going to be hiring subcontractors.
But I
that then
can't.
would hire
yeah.
the
we have had the
workers.
discussion once or twice about, at the IDA about, are there local people that can do this work? And that again is something that I think is pretty exciting about this, if we were able to build a much larger core of capable people.
Yeah, I was anecdotally having a conversation with my sprinkler contractor, and they're down of a 50-person workforce, they're down 20 people in order to meet so basically they're bidding all their jobs at full overtime rates. So, because that's just the only way to get it done. And, if you think about that as a developer, it's like, well, the workforce very much directly impacts your cost. And that's at a regional level. These people have offices in Syracuse and Binghamton and kind of around. So I think, there is some pretty substantial, just a huge gap to fill, especially the big project like Southworks is going to happen.
Did you have something, Todd?
Yeah, and Danny, you're talking about just giving basic entry level kind of qualifications and skills, just to be able to hit the ground kind of running. You're not talking like training people off the street, just using taxpayers' money to train people off the street for individual employers. You're looking at something, just trying to get everybody's level up to a certain point so they can start with somebody's, whether it's union or non-union, so they can start with a company?
Yeah, so often when I've built these programs that are industry specific, it's always about industry exposure. They're not going to be a master in any skill. Essentially, they will continue on to some further continuing education. So the TST BOCES route, essentially NCCER, which is a national curriculum, the National Construction Curriculum Education and Research. Don't quote me exactly on the acronym, but the words are there. It is math, measurement, blueprint reading, OSHA, rigging, material handling, all basic industry exposure. It's usually coupled with hands-on experience, and as well as career readiness and kind of figuring career exploration, how you're going to advance. For the trade side, essentially we'd want to work with the Trades Council and the North American Building Trades Council to use the nationally recognized curriculum for pre-apprenticeships, which is MC3, multiple core curriculum, and that once again would be customized to the needs of transitioning to apprenticeship. Once again, introductory, it would be more of exam preparations that are needed to go into an apprenticeship, as well as exposure to all of the available apprenticeships that are available. So once again, not a master in any type of trade, but it would be exposure to all trades that are available.
Thank you.
Okay. I know it's just after 2, so we got to keep moving, but thank you. Questions for Tom? Jeff?
So, Tom, obviously you sent us a bunch of documents here beforehand. I read some of it. I wasn't able to get through all of it. So a couple of my big questions were, so who operates it? I did answer that. So it's the Friends of Ithaca Farmers Market is really what the proposal sounds like, correct? So it's just a local nonprofit organization that would operate something like this?
Yeah, they would be the fiscal umbrella as we build an independent not-for-profit, most likely.
Okay, so
and
you guys would
the
propose an
individual who completed the study, Rod Rotundi, and is actively working on fundraising from private individuals to support the operational gap over the first 2 years, would be the person who would step into the role as executive director, program director.
So then my next question was, so walk me through the woods and like who would use this? Is this like a single person that's trying to get into the restaurant business or has developed a, food and then they're going to cater out of it? Or like, talk to me about who uses this stuff.
Sure. Well, we did a needs assessment survey where we reached out to entrepreneurs in the food space and asked them, what they're doing now, and then asked them a bunch of questions about basically would they use a facility like this if it existed, as well as other questions. And I think we surveyed, we got responses from 68 different business owners. The majority of those were folks that were actually making and selling a tangible packaged food product. Most of them at a fairly small scale. So take, for example, if you go to the Ithaca Farmers Market, you see a bunch of these folks. So Mojo's Hot Sauce is a local hot sauce maker. Coincidentally, they just purchased a facility in Newark Valley because we didn't have what they needed here to expand. They started selling at Farmers Market. They grew a following. They do the market scene. And a lot of these folks start out in their mother-in-law's kitchen. We're all familiar with the story of Emmy's Organics, and that's how Ian and Samantha started, right? They started selling at market and selling out of Ian's, or making the product in Ian's mom's kitchen. It took them a while to get where they are, and we hold them up as this wonderful model that they are in our community that was able to scale. Not everybody's going to be able to scale. But we think that there's some folks, who are already making a product that need to scale a little bit in order to continue to grow their distribution and sales. But they're sort of a little hamstrung right now because there's this gap between making it out of, the proverbial mom's kitchen and having your own facility or working with a co-packer. So having this facility combined with some wraparound business development assistance would help some more folks. We're talking probably 2 to 3 dozen at stabilization, primarily food manufacturers, small food manufacturers using this facility. There's strong interest amongst caterers and food trucks, and also some folks, who are doing, value-added processing, but primarily focused on the farmers that could potentially use the space, and certainly we heard strong interest in that. The focus of this kitchen would be on food manufacturing more so than catering, but there's certainly an opportunity to fill it with folks doing those kinds of activities, which could help with ramping up to stabilization and overall financial sustainability.
One more question.
Okay.
So then what I'm hearing then is really there would be 2 kind of tenants or, people that are using it. Maybe a permanent resident that just wants to maintain their current level, doesn't want to necessarily grow or anything like that, but needs a better kitchen to produce their goods and sell it at the farmer's market or something. And then there's the other one that would be the Emmys hopefully they can scale up enough. This is a stepping stone for them to a much larger, hopefully, endeavor.
Yeah, I think that's true, that there would be at least both of those audiences.
John?
So a couple of questions. I think that some of what we're looking at here was actually an application to the ARPA funds through the county. And in reading through the feasibility study, it sounds like there may also be a model where an investor group owns the equipment and leases it. It seems like there's sort of like a number of avenues for funding here, of which we are potentially one. Is that accurate, that there's sort of like a bunch of different ways this could get funded here?
Yes, and the way that we're thinking about it now is if we can secure grant funding through the county's Community Recovery Grant Fund or IDA fund balance assistance to purchase the equipment, there's an additional probably $150,000 that's needed for operational subsidy during the first 2 years. Our pro forma and our financial modeling shows that by the end of year 2 and year 3, you reach a point where the rent revenues from those that are using the kitchen can cover the rent that would be paid to the landlord, plus the payback on the private financing. And so we're in conversations with folks on the private side right now to form an LLC that would hold the lease on the space. The operator would be the not-for-profit Friends of Ithaca Farmers Market that would hire the staff and manage the facility. So that's kind of general summary of how we're thinking about how the financial picture in the short term and the ownership works.
So the funding that would come from us would be in addition to the ARPA funding?
No, at this point, we don't need to purchase the equipment twice. The ARPA funding, this project was scored. There was only one project that received a higher score in the $25,000 to $250,000 range by the consultant that was hired by the county. At committee, this project received a 3-3 vote, and therefore it did not move forward to the resolution that was voted on by the committee. I have reached out to legislators to ask them to consider this project, and I don't know where that is in process. So it's a little bit of a black box.
The funding request was for the same thing that you're requesting funding for here at the
But it sounds like, okay, so then it's not particularly likely that
we don't need to buy 2 sets of equipment. It's either would be great, and then we can move forward.
Right, okay. And it seems like there's some amount of like time pressure. You're concerned you might lose access to the space or something like that. Can you speak a little bit about like like if we considered this for a meeting or 2 and didn't vote right away, like what's the impact on the project?
Yeah, the landlords have been, I think, pretty generous in terms of, we touch base with them often and update them on where we are in the process. We've been doing that since February of this year, and they have sort of quietly held the space with the potential that they would land a lease with this project at some point. we're in real-time conversation with them right now about where we are with these different funding requests. You know, I feel that if we're successful within the next couple of months with these requests, obviously we can get into that space quickly and secure the space for this use. If not, we're looking at other grant sources that likely push it out to the end of next year-ish, which, you know, there's pressure for that landlord to lease that space to somebody else who might come and do so. So, you know, I don't know what other conversations they're having. As I said, they've been very generous with us. But we could definitely lose the space, and then we'd be faced with, you know, having to figure out how to build a space like that, which is going to be way more expensive than $100,000 to $150,000 for equipment right now.
And just one last question, and the pro forma, it sounds like, has some substantial operating profit in later years. What would you think about doing something like this as a loan where there was just zero payment for the first 2 years and then we serviced it over 5 after that, or something like that? I mean, one of the things I think we're looking at with our fund balance is that once it goes away, it's gone. If there was some possibility it might come back. I mean, do you think that the project could sustain something like that?
Our financial modeling suggests that is an option. I think that it, you know, would obviously benefit the overall financial viability of the project if we can get the equipment purchased and not have to, you know, amortize that through whatever mechanism we decided to do that. So certainly preferred approach is to get a grant or funding to support equipment purchase, but our financial modeling shows that a loan payback could potentially work under the sort of middle scenario, yeah.
All right, Shauna?
Yeah, I know we don't have much time, but I think this is actually a really good project. And I've heard feedback in our community that this is something that's really needed from small businesses, from businesses that have underrepresented populations who don't have the money or the startup costs to have a commercial kitchen. And I think that the umbrella of the farmers market actually makes good business sense. As far as the recovery funds, it did receive a 3-3 vote, and so it's not being recommended to move forward. Just to let everyone know. That's not to say that Tuesday, amongst 13 legislators, we can absolutely rehash the 200 hours that we put into recovery funds already, because we probably will. But I'm not sure this would be something that would rise to the top, because we're also, this is competing against like mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, that type of thing, and it just hasn't come to the top of the recovery fund. But I think this is a great project. I would definitely support this.
Can I just ask a follow-up question that Shauna had sent? So 3-3 vote. So, and you had mentioned it was the second highest rated project. So, like, any sense as to why it didn't go through? Like, why would you turn it down if it was the second highest vote? Maybe you don't know.
I cannot answer. Perhaps one of our legislators.
Yeah. Again, I didn't serve on the committee, but the consultant we hired, they did a scoring.
Yeah.
But that was based on their assessment of the projects using certain objective criteria, but they didn't come at it with an understanding of the individual organizations and the need in the community in the same way as the legislators. And there was never any commitment that whatever the score was mechanically it would be applied. So that's just, the votes came out very differently in some cases. I do have a question if everybody else is done. Pre-treatment. One idea that I've heard kicked around is to do use the dairy farms and make cheese locally. That we don't have a centralized cheese company. Could this be used for that? But I know that Ithaca wastewater treatment would be pretty sensitive to putting waste solids and proteins down the. Would this be capable of that?
I'd like to ask our consultant to get back to you with a response to that question. Rod Rotundi actually has operated 4 different plant-based cheeses himself in Los Angeles and is considering starting up one here. So I think he would be very knowledgeable.
I'd love to hear more, because to the extent this idea could connect to our local farmers, I think makes it even more exciting. I agree with Shauna. There's some real nice stuff proposed here. But in the farm to table, that would be a real nice element of it. Anybody else? Heather?
I would just like to suggest that, there are great ideas, but you need to have a viable financial model. Anyone was here during the wine center debacle, it was a great idea, but there was no revenue model. Here we've got a study that IAED was actually the pass-through for the funding that was received from the IURA to do the feasibility study. The study was completed by somebody that actually is looking to give himself a job running this facility, so there was a little bit of a bias there. We found several fallacies in some of the assumptions and the financial modeling. I don't disagree that it's not a great idea and there would be some benefit for this community, but we didn't feel that there was actually, people that were, for example, people that were surveyed for the study said, how much would you be willing to pay for this kind of space and how many hours would you need? And if you looked at the number of hours and if you looked at what they said they would pay, the financial model is almost double what they say they could pay as an hourly rate. There's just a number of fallacies within the pro forma, so I would suggest if the IDA was really serious about funding a project that they might want to look at, the study with an eye towards, is this thing really going to be financially viable?
Yeah, if I could interrupt, I think that's a great segue, because we're running out of time for one, but I think we need to decide, how do we want to proceed from here? Do we want to set up a committee? Do we want the whole IDA to continue to look at these? But I agree completely. We want to be really careful with how we're allocating this fund balance. What is the thinking of the members? You just lived through the committee. It's such a good experience that.
I probably won't be on a new committee if you ask for volunteers. I guess the other question is, Tom is coming to us because maybe he's heard word of mouth, but I'm not sure our community as a whole understands that we might have fund balance that we're looking to donate, essentially. And I think there should be a question of how would we let our community know that, because I don't think it should be a matter of who heard word of mouth that we have some funds that are available. So I would actually make a plea that we make an announcement or put it on the website or get an article in the Ithaca Voice or something so that word gets out in the community.
How soon do we need to act on the fund balance? Is there something pressing?
We can sit on our fund balance. Never is an answer, but the issue is, should we be doing that? Is that the best thing for us to do? So that's why we're having these conversations, is just to consider it. We're not forced to. John?
How much was there in the American Recovery Act funds like that?
$6.5 million.
And how much did you get in terms of requests?
$32 million.
And we have maybe 700 grand we plan on spending. And this is I feel like there's if we put the call out to the community, we're going to get $30 million worth of requests. And I have no idea how we would evaluate what the right places to put our money are. And I think at this point, my sort of, the thing that I was kind of driving at when I started pushing on hoping that we could have these conversations was can we think about what would make a good use of our funds at a high level? Questions in our previous conversations we've talked about well, can we leverage things? Can we consider stuff where we might be able to spend the funds multiple times, like the way IURA has lent out the same money 10 times and they keep getting it back. It's what are the things that we can do that are really the best ways for us to deploy funding at sort of the meta level before we actually specifically allocate it to specific projects, and it's just gone. At the same time, like, I think that I would find it pretty overwhelming if all of a sudden we got a flood of everybody who just didn't get ARPA funding.
I was going to say it'd be 32 million minus 6.5, so it's.
No, it would be like 50 million somehow, because they're all the people who didn't get their application in on time. And I think, though, at the same time, like, I do think that this project, as well as the other one that we've heard about today, are things that we all know are real community priorities that actually could have a profound impact on the people that, you know, like, need opportunity here. Like, there's a gap in opportunity in our community. And, you know, and I think that these other things that, you know, we're seeing as like negative outcomes, the crime and the homelessness and et cetera, are actually fed by that opportunity gap. So I don't want to see us just sit on our hands forever, navel gazing at the same time. So I don't know exactly what that means in terms of how we proceed, but, you know, I mean, I think that, like, in my mind, if we could work out, for instance, you know, a low interest loan here where it was like, you know, we're not going to get anything back for the first however long, and then et cetera, that I could see funding something like this as something that's obviously a community priority. Just giving the money away is a little harder because of the associated, you know, it's just gone after that.
Heather, you had a comment.
And Stephen, back me up. Under law, the IDA cannot loan or grant funds. They cannot run a loan fund.
No, but I mean, we can buy the equipment and lease it back to the company with a payment structure on it, as we discussed with the Knickerbocker Fund. So, for instance, we could own the equipment for 7 years, and there could be no payments in year 1 or 2, and then payments in years 3 through 7. Transfer it for $1 at the end. I mean, like, that's what we did with Knickerbocker, except slightly different.
And if the project goes belly up, does the IDA really want to own kitchen equipment?
I mean, there are risks in any project. So.
Okay, anybody else? What I would propose is that we continue as we've been, that at our next meeting, we start an hour earlier and continue this discussion and try to find our way. Does that make sense to everybody?
And a request to Heather's point there, can we get financial details on this, on the kitchen, so we can analyze that?
Do we not already have those? I didn't get through all the
information, so maybe we do, but I just wasn't.
There are a number of appendices that the results of which are sort of pulled into the report. We can share all those appendices with you as well.
Okay, that'd be great.
And I'm happy to share my analysis, which is slightly different as well.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right, so let's plan on that.
I also wanted to just point out that at the last special meeting, you did ask for additional detail to support the wayfinding signage, so I did provide that for you
I was
today.
just going to say thank you for your work in
welcome.
getting this to us, because that makes me feel much better that this provides a lot of the information I was asking for, so appreciate it. All right, any other business before the special meeting of the IDA? Could I get a motion to adjourn? John moves, Jeff seconds. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. I'm assuming Mike voted to adjourn as well. We'll take a very short break and commence the regular meeting of the IDA at 2:30. It's okay.
Sorry, John. Yes, proceed.
Unless you just want to keep talking. Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for December 14th, 2022. Welcome to everybody who's attending. I do have one item I wanted to just cover. Mike Sigler is in virtual attendance today, and under our policy in New York State law, he may participate in the meeting. He does not count towards quorum, but he is able to vote. And the category it fits into is other significant or unexpected unforeseen factors which precludes attendance. And that was presented to Heather and myself, and I can assure you it was good reason. So with that said, I'd like to proceed to privilege of the floor. I have one written comment and one blue card. If anybody else wishes to speak, the blue cards are over in the corner and you can sign up. I'd invite Teresa Alt to come talk to us.
Is it on?
Yes, it is.
Good. Okay. I am here to speak about 132 Cherry Clinton, the Hive. At the hearing, I spoke against it in general terms, out of the CTAP district, and not really addressing the city's most urgent problem, affordable housing, not just any housing. Peter Wissaker provided a sophisticated analysis, but also cautioned against a blanket acceptance. He suggested perhaps you could accept it given certain provisions. Both our testimonies are in the packet. What is new in the packet is that Laura Lewis has apparently been asked for a letter of recommendation and has produced a very lukewarm letter. I call it roll over and play dead. She says it's up to the IDA to decide. Now, this reflects other instances in the past where the city has tried to put limits or changes, and the IDA has gotten very aggressive and said, no, it's us, not you, little city. And I don't think this is really according to basic principles according to which IDAs are supposed to operate. I believe they are supposed to listen to the local feelings. But it is apparently being left up to the IDA, and so I say, think carefully, and please don't set a precedent that you so love all developers that any developer can come to you within or outside the district, useful or useless, and you will grant a tax abatement. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. I also have a letter from Peter Wissaker, which I will read into the record. This is in addition to his letter to presented at the public hearing. So, forgive me for not appearing in person. I'm immunocompromised. In my public hearing comments, which I hope everyone read, I laid out 3 reasons for not supporting VISM, aka 132 Cherry Clinton LLC's request for tax breaks. 1, it is not the TCIDA's job to increase the leverage and profitability of the developer. 2, nor is it your job to make good a risk taken by the developer based on insider information that did not pan out as expected. And finally, 3, the agency should not be financing market rate housing projects. For these reasons, I urge you to reject the request for tax breaks. It is a good project, but not one that should be funded using the taxpayers' money. If you decide to go ahead and support the project through tax breaks, I urge you to slow down the process and seriously consider the terms under which you do so. Speaking of which, I hope that by now you have received a revised outside cost-benefit analysis as the one in the original package tripled the estimated number of jobs that would be created during construction, and therefore the benefits of the project. In my earlier comments, I offered 6 suggestions for altering the agreement, from insisting that the tax benefits not be conveyed if the project is sold, and that the taxing districts receive a proportionate share of the profits from any sale of the buildings, to guaranteeing better labor standards and attempting to have more of the building materials purchased within the county. Finally, given that the project is not located within the CTAP area, I suggested that it should be put on the 7-year schedule rather than the 10, if it is to be supported at all. I hope you integrate these ideas into your thinking. We know that to give the project serious consideration takes time and negotiation between you, as the board, and the agency's staff. It is your job to ensure that the agency's fine staff does well by the city and the county. And sometimes that means checking their enthusiasm. Given that Section 7 of the agreement you are voting on empowers the chair, vice chair, and/or administrative director of the agency to negotiate and enter into the project agreement, I urge you to work through what the agency's negotiating position should be so that whoever does the negotiating will have a firm set of guidelines that reflect the agency's position. To move ahead in its current state would not serve the taxpayers well. At a time when we can't compete with other communities to pay our DPW workers to plow our streets, and when property taxes keep rising to fund the schools, please slow down and carefully consider whether giving this market-rate housing project is the best use of our tax money. I believe it is not. If you believe it is, then what compromises should the developer make to give the community a fair return? If this isn't a question you can answer in the next half hour without feeling rushed, then I urge you to either vote no or table the issue until you have a clearer answer. Thank you, Peter Wiseker. Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the IDA? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to, well, let me ask, are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll proceed to business. Our first item is Southworks project overview, and I think Vicki Taylor-Browse is here with us today. If you'd like to come up to the table.
Yeah, I'm going to ask that you invite the entire team up.
Yeah.
I told them they have about 20 minutes on the agenda today, since we do have some other items. This is a really exciting project that has been many years in the making. A big milestone happened last week, the closing on the sale of the former Emerson Power Transmission facility. So I have asked the development team to come and introduce themselves, give an overview of some of their accomplishments to date, and really share with you all their vision and plan for repurposing and redeveloping this 98-ish acre parcel just a stone's throw from downtown. We have started discussing a pilot agreement and what that might look like. It's a little bit different than what we generally would do, because this project is a little bit different and a little bit larger than what we generally see. So that will come later. This is really an opportunity for them to share some of their excitement and some of their visions. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Nena.
Well, actually, we're going to start with Brian, but how do we work the mics? Are they on?
They just work.
You
Yeah,
want to be
okay,
about
great.
6 inches away. That's
Okay,
fine.
great. Do we have the presentation?
Yes, let me just pull that up here.
So while she's pulling that up, I'll just introduce all of us real quick. David, do you just want to say hello real quick?
I'm David Lubin. I've been working on this project for 12 years, and it's been a difficult project, but exciting. I think it has a lot of benefits to the community, and looking to really develop a new neighborhood that's been sort of isolated from Ithaca for 1904, I guess. So try to bring it back into the community.
I'm Vicki Taylor-Browse, and I've worked on this project for about 10 years as a consultant with David Lubin, and I am now a project coordinator with Shift Capital out of Philadelphia with projects in upstate and New Jersey, and so I'm excited to join the team.
Intro real quick.
Yes,
Yeah.
hi, Nena Lynch. I'm the founder and CEO of Xylem Projects, a mission-driven real estate development firm and one of the 4 partners on this project.
And our other partner, Melissa Geska, out of Rochester, was not able to join today, but we will certainly be talking about her as we weave through the presentation. My name is Brian Murray. I'm the CEO of Shift Capital. We are a mission-driven, B-certified real estate group focused on developing equitable neighborhoods. We are vertically based in Philadelphia, but we do work, as I mentioned, in Rochester, Newark, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., and we usually do that through partnerships. And this is no different. We are really excited to be here. I think the mandate is just to do an introduction, to share a little bit about us, to share a little bit about where we are at the project. I don't know if we're doing Q&A and how that works, but from my standpoint, you feel free to interrupt if you have any specific questions as we go. Just the next slide, Heather, I guess. Yeah. So let me just introduce the 4 partners here. And I already kind of mentioned us, so I won't go too deep there. But we do and are excited about this project because we are mission focused, for one, and 2, we really believe in a neighborhood approach to our work. And so a lot of developers are multifamily specialists or affordable housing specialists or office specialists, and we really have made a name and have continued to focus on this place-based approach to our work, which we think is the best way to contribute to the communities that we work in. David, you all know, and if there's lots of great things I can say about David, but you probably know enough to know that this man has blood, sweat, and tears in this project for 10 years to get it to this point, and we're just blessed to be able to work with him and continue to build on his vision. Nena here with us, when as David and I were kind of determining, our relationship, I knew this was a project that we wanted to bring in some other groups for a variety of reasons. Nena, who I hope introduces herself a little bit more, but deep public-private experience, both in the governmental sector and decades in the real estate sector as well, and has been also, just like Shift, been focused on mission-driven work for many years. And so that component of her skill set is a huge complement to ours. And then the 4th group is U.S. Sealing Corp. Part of the reason that we got involved is because we were already working on a project in Rochester with U.S. Sealing, and Melissa Geska, the leader of that. It is part a construction company as well as a development company. And Melissa's, in addition to being in the construction world, has also built her business on workforce development for disadvantaged communities. Also a natural partner, both because of her of where her business is, but also because of that construction experience as well. Before we move on, just I will tell everyone that, and some folks in the room know this, we've been off and running on this project for quite a few months. I mean, David's been off and running for 10 years, but truly trying to bring as much of a running start to our closing last week as we could. And that included hiring and bringing together a complete team. CJS Architects was actually the architect that has been working with David for many years, based out of Rochester. Fagan Engineers has also been working with David as well for many years, probably known as well. And we were blessed to both kind of adopt them into a new team structure. The 2 new groups are Scape, which is a internationally recognized landscaping group, and they are do incredible work around the world, which is very exciting to bring that type of perspective to Ithaca, but also very focused on sustainability, which leads then to Burrow Happold, which is also an internationally recognized sustainability firm, both because of Ithaca's already, stated goals, but also the size of the site really, and we'll get into this, really allow us to go deep on the sustainability side, and we're excited about that. Tatum Engineering has been involved with the project as well, certainly going to support on a variety of engineering fronts, and then we've brought in Pike and Lassesi to assist on the pre-con. We are still open to how we're going to do construction on the site, but they're assisting on the front end of the site. Next slide. And I'm going to hand it off to Vicki, who's been on the front end and give an intro to the site.
So I'm just going to do a brief introduction. The site is 95 acres, but about 32 of them are actually developable. And it actually spans the city and the town of Ithaca. So we work with both municipalities. We have a PUD and a PDZ established. We're looking to do the adaptive reuse of 821,000 square feet of existing structures. And we are looking to build about an additional 1 million square feet on the project. At its completion, the project will be 1.7 million square feet with a rough breakdown of mixed income housing at 1 million square feet and about 900 units, commercial, office, and tech space at about 450,000 square feet, and manufacturing industrial at 250. And the site is in an empire and opportunity zone. What have we been doing for 10 years, you must ask? The complications of this site required that we worked with the DEC for environmental remediation. We did our own independent investigation of the site, and I must say that it's one of the most, if not the most, investigated site in New York State for environmental. We finally had our amended record of decision, which changed the property from industrial to residential. So the record of decision allows for residential uses, and we had our approval of the site management plan with DEC in October of 2022, which triggered the closing for the property. We've been through the SECRA process with city and town. We have established the PDZ and PUD. We have phase 1 site plan approval in the city of Ithaca for buildings 21, 24, 33, and 34, and select demolition. We had the real estate closing last week, December 7th, and we anticipate construction and demolition beginning in spring of 2023. Here is the master plan as it was submitted as part of the generic environmental impact statement. And I'm going to turn it over to Nena, who can talk about some of the slight changes we might be making.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what you see here is the site plan, and just to orient you, to the left is the north of the site, and to the right, the bottom where it says Oak Forest, that's the south, and the top there would be Ithaca College. So what we're doing, so we have an approved site plan, but with the new consultants on board, in particular the landscape architect who's been on site, some of you have met and done a thorough investigation, is still in the early stages of developing their plan. They're really looking at the site and really making sure we're thinking about the circulation and the entryways and where are the opportunities for gathering. I think one of the really interesting and exciting aspects of this site is that we see it as ultimately is going to be very much a public amenity, right? There's going to be outdoor space, it's going to be public accessible, whereas for all these years and decades, in fact, it's been closed off. And so this is just a first, is just an example of some of the analysis that they're doing in thinking about the site and circulation and the gateways and the entry points. Next slide. So here's another slide that also came from Scape, the landscape architect, starting to look at, okay, where are the view corridors, where are the opportunities for gathering, and definitely requires a little bit of a leap of imagination. But this is really just meant to give you a taste of the type of analysis that they're doing. Really, this is really just one little bit of the analysis they're doing that is going to result in actual design ideas that we'll be able to share at a later point. But yeah, this just gives you an idea of some of the gathering places that we foresee. Next slide. Okay, so there are multiple components to the project, right? This is a mixed use. It's a whole new neighborhood, as Brian talked about. So a key part of it includes housing. So as Vicki mentioned, we estimate there are going to be approximately 900 units of housing. And we're really excited about our approach to that housing, which is that we intend for it to be mixed income. So it's everything from affordable and market rate and workforce, which is, the band in between. And the challenge with workforce housing, as you probably know, is unlike affordable housing, which comes with subsidies, often workforce housing does not, but often the demand is just as great. So this is something we're starting to take a look at and figure if we can crack that, solve that puzzle. And that's just an indicative rendering of a type of modular construction that we're investigating. Next slide. So another key feature of the site and our approach to it is that, and one of the things that we're super excited about is that the site has the potential to be a real catalyst for businesses to grow in Ithaca, to stay in Ithaca, to grow in Ithaca. So one of the things we're undertaking currently is a survey of the current needs. Some of the anecdotes we've heard are that there are many businesses that would love to stay in Ithaca and grow in Ithaca, but they actually have nowhere to go. So we're actually undertaking an analysis to really better understand that in a more granular way. But we see our site as a potential home for these businesses to be able to stay and grow in Ithaca and also attract new businesses. Well, and more to come on that. Next slide. So sustainability. We mentioned Burrow Happold, our internationally renowned sustainability consultant, who's on board. What this slide is really meant to indicate is that we're taking a holistic and comprehensive approach to sustainability. So it's not just about buildings; it's about so much more. So we're thinking about micromobility, for example, and materials and waste, and as well as energy. So again, more to come on this, but this is a slide from Burrow Happold's recent presentation to us about the overall analysis of the site, and in short order, we'll have a more detailed plan. But this just gives you an overview of the ways in which we're thinking about it. Next slide. So where does all this land us? So our current estimate for the project cost is in excess of $340 million. That, of course, is going to be over several years. And we have brought on an economic impact consultant named eConsult Solutions, who is in the process of analyzing the site impacts. But this is sort of the draft analysis. The bottom line is the impacts are quite large. So, and I'm sure you've seen these types of analyses, but there's the impact during construction, and then there's the ongoing impact from the build out. So during construction, over the approximately decade of construction, they estimate equivalent of approximately 4,600 full-time equivalent jobs. And these are direct and indirect jobs, so jobs that will be generated by the site, but then jobs that will be generated by the purchasing that's going on. And this is within the county. So permanent jobs upon stabilization, 2,300 and $724 million economic impact. And we will have more details to share on this count, but this is want to just touch on the overall impact. But another really important component is that, so these jobs, right, what's going to happen, where are they going to come from? Well, our partner, Melissa Geska of U.S. Sealing Corp., has this strong background in workforce development. So we're actually in the process of putting together a coalition of workforce development experts, and that we hope to house on site. So to actually do workforce development on site for both the construction and the permanent jobs. That's a feature we're really excited about. I don't think there's a feature I'm not excited about. I keep using that word. But it is what it is. Okay, next slide. Okay, so grants and funding. So we have David, under David's leadership with Vicki, they secured a NYSERDA grant a few years ago, so that's in hand. And we have been in the process but looking at and applying for other grants, and so just want to highlight that. So, and the underpinning reality here is that this is a large, complicated project. There are major infrastructure needs to adaptively reuse this site and these buildings, and so just want to be straightforward that I think this is one element which it's very much a public-private partnership, and so in addition to circling back on the pilot, these are other sources that we'll be looking to tap. Next slide. Okay, back to Brian.
So just to wrap this up, and I think we're at 14 minutes, 53 seconds, not bad. I think we had 15, and we did not rehearse, so that was good. I mean, I guess I'll just say in summary that, this is a generational opportunity, and we think we put together an exceptional team that cares deeply about the outcomes for the city of Ithaca, the town of Ithaca, and the community. We're going to fight like no tomorrow across the board to lean in as much as possible, as much as we can, but it will take a group effort, and that's what we love doing. We love these type of partnerships, and one big reason we're here is because we felt that type of partnership here almost from the day we stepped onto campus, both with David, but also with Heather and her team. And, we're looking forward to that partnership and delivering as much value as we can for the county, the community, the city, and the town. So thank you.
Thank you. This was a really great presentation. We're going to start a journey together. That's really neat. I have a question for the IDA members. Have you all had a chance to do a walkthrough? Has everybody seen this site? I've been through several times. Every time I go, I'm like, wow. The scale of this is something I think it would be really helpful if you're willing to give a tour for the IDA members just to understand how big this is, if we could arrange that. So, questions, comments? Shauna.
Yeah, I just have a few questions prior to getting started. Can you tell us a little bit about the demolition? And I know that it exists kind of on top of a neighborhood, South Hill area, and I'm wondering what type of neighbor protections will be in place?
As it relates to the demolition itself? So first off, there'll probably only be select demo. We plan to adaptively reuse as much of the site as possible. Most of the demolition will be happening kind of in the middle of the site. And just because of the access points, there is not a case where that demolition is going to be coming through the neighborhood and out of the site. So I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in, but I don't see that there's going to be any issues. And then, I should comment, or Vicki can comment, that we have a good dialogue already, and I don't know if you want to weigh in on just kind of community conversations there?
Yeah, so we are looking to demolish several buildings in order to create park-like space and circulation throughout the site, and we're still determining where the best place to do that is to take advantage of the natural resources, such as a natural waterfall that flows through the site. Turner Place and Cayuga Streets both come to what would be the northwest of the site. And there are 4 access points along 96B that can be used. So we're working with our traffic experts and our engineers to look at circulation. What's the best way if we do have to bring trucks onto the site, have them leave the site? But we'll also be notifying the community about when we're doing the work. So thoughtful process and definitely some public community engagement is going to happen for this site before we do anything.
And then I think that was my second question as far as the traffic patterns, because Route 96 as it is, South Hill is right around the corner. Pickup for parents whenever South Hill is either starting or getting out, it's backing up pretty far up on Route 96. And so I just want to be very aware of the traffic patterns and the addition of residents, 900 residents. Hopefully they're not all driving cars to this project.
And I think we've already been working with local transportation experts in bike, walking, micro-mobility. We've been working with Fernando at the county to really examine what the best site circulation would be, but also to encourage walking, biking, and alternative car sharing programs. So to limit the reliance on the gas automobile, we will have some electric car stations, and we are looking at a bus charging station on the site. So definitely encouraging public transit and mass transit. So as we get results on that, I'll be certain to forward them.
And I'll just comment that I think one of the big kind of projects that we have over the next couple of months is connectivity itself. So the site has opportunities to kind of connect down and towards the city. But on the the top end of the site, everyone kind of drives by on Aurora and sees that main entrance, but there's actually 4 or 5 different kind of entry points to the site that, as we think about that school and what's going on as you get down the hill, and we'll be incorporating that thinking into it as well.
We're also meeting with Ithaca College and talking to them about what their future plans are so that we can align the 2 sites together so that we can manage what those intersections should look like. Do we need traffic calming? What should be the ways to traverse the site itself? But Cayuga Street we're looking at as a place for like recreation where the Gateway Trail comes through, and we have bike share opportunities there.
Sorry.
Also done a generic environmental impact statement and work with DOT and traffic engineers to, investigate and minimize the impact as much as we can. It's a unique site, and there are, as I said, quite a few entrances and exits.
Yeah, we got to keep going, but yes, let's get some more questions in. John?
Are you concerned about the impact of on the local market of dropping that much office space on it all at once? I mean, I know David's own building downtown has a bit of vacancy in it. I think that our office market has been struggling, and to put a pretty large chunk of office space on the market could be challenging both for your own absorption and also for the rest of the community.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as much office as, I think some of this is still a little bit in flux, and part of that is that survey that we're doing. The goal really is to try to be additive overall to the ecosystem, right? We think that this will ultimately be a net positive for downtown office space as well, but we're very aware of it, and we're, I think, working very closely with IAD and others to think about how we want to position it. In all likelihood, we touched on this a little bit, but it'll probably not be a traditional office product. And so whether that's building off of, the number of businesses that have been leaving the city to New York or San Francisco that may have stayed for another round of funding, so to speak, before they had to leave from a funding standpoint. We do a lot of work in other cities with the maker and craft community, and there's certainly something we're going to look at as well. Again, that's not really going to be competing against, I think, of that traditional office space. But it's certainly something that is a big part of our process over the next few months as well. And again, we want this site to feel like it's, the sum of the parts are larger for the ecosystem, not subtractive from anything else.
The other thing I'll add is just a comment on phasing. So, not all that space is going to be built at once. And so what we're really looking at in the first phase is perhaps 100,000 square feet, maybe 200 in that realm. But it's going to be on the basis of some solid analysis and pre-leasing and conversation. So it's going to be incremental, because your comment was about both the type of space but also flooding the market. And so I just want to assure you that that both because the type of space is going to be differentiated, but also because of the timing and the phasing, we don't foresee flooding the market.
Okay. Anybody else at this time? Todd?
Yeah, I'm just curious, with this type of money, you must have some tenants in line already, right, that have, is there anything you could share with us on any tenants, or?
We've taken this risk with 0 tenants.
Really?
We do have some discussions that we're having and partnerships that we're working on to bring to the site, both local partnerships and external partnerships that want to come to Ithaca. Nothing at the moment that I can speak about, but we do have some promising things that we'll be excited to bring back. Whether that's a hospitality partner, or whether that's industrial partner, or some other kind of anchoring groups that we think will be part of the ethos, but it's still way too early.
Okay.
Like Mike Sigler might have a question.
Mike, yeah.
Hi, and I actually have 2 questions. I liked what you were saying about reuse and all that. The largest building up there, I think, is mostly concrete. Do you envision that building? It's a long building. Like football fields length kind of thing. Do you envision that kind of staying intact and building around that? It's just so much concrete.
So the building you're referring to is Building 34, and the building next to it, Building 33. So our current thinking is, and the current interest in the site that we haven't been able to act on because we had to close, is that the largest building will remain manufacturing or light industrial uses or industrial uses that will use the southernmost entrance to the site. The building next to it, Building 33, we would like to put a pass-through through 33 or through 6A. So we're just determining the best use of that. Those are also concrete, so could be used for other fill.
Well, and I'll just add, so the demolition strategy, which we're still working out, there are 2 objectives. One is, what type of building from the interior creates like a reasonable space that is usable, right? But then there's also taking the step back, the macro picture of the site plan, and what cut-throughs do you need to be able to facilitate circulation on the site? So those are the 2 ways in which we're thinking about it. We, as was mentioned earlier, we plan to adaptively reuse as much as possible, but with these select strategic demolition.
Okay.
All right.
Did you have a second question, Mike?
Yeah, my second question is, Onondaga obviously is going to be a hub for chip manufacturing, Binghamton for battery manufacturing, we hope anyway. Has there been, they're not going to have enough space for any of the things that they're hoping to do, and I'm hoping to get lead off from that. I would imagine you are too. Has there been outreach to those 2 counties, and does that play into your thinking at all? Or I'm just curious. It might be early for that.
The Micron announcement happened when we were way already kind of moving towards close. really, I think we're working closely with IAD directly on those type of outreach conversations. If that ends up being, a net positive, and we can help contribute with square footage that's close by, I think that's great. It wasn't part of our original plan, but it certainly feels like it could allow Ithaca to get into those conversations in a way that maybe was very difficult before. So, it's early, as you just said, and, I think a lot has to play out with those places. But, I will tell you that, the federal investment in hydrogen, has certainly already played into discussions. There's a lot of dollars flowing through a lot of different groups that I think need the type of space that we could potentially be offering. So whether it's hydrogen or whether it's semiconductor industry, I think we're going to be exploring all of them and thinking about how they can fit into the project.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? We do need to move on, but this is really we could talk about this for a long time.
We will talk about this for a long time.
We will talk about this for a long time. To Shauna's point about community impacts, the county has a text messaging system, Siren, that can be tailored to neighborhoods. And so when you get to the point you're having real community impact because of activity there, there may be the ability to send out messages that would go directly to the people who live around, just so you know.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
We've been working with the South Hill neighborhood community for 8 years.
Association.
Okay.
Great.
Well, Siren.
Yes. I'm going to leave my business cards with Heather, and happy to give anybody a tour at any point. I now have an office as of yesterday on site.
Wonderful.
I'll be in touch to see if we can set something up for the entire group.
Great. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up on our agenda is 132 Cherry Clinton LLC, The Hive. And I think we have a guest. Todd, would you like to come up and join us?
We've got Todd here in person. We also have Laura Matos via Zoom joining us from the development team today. You have in your packet an authorizing resolution, the public hearing notice and minutes, the return on investment memo, and a support letter from the City of Ithaca. At last month's meeting, the application was reviewed and accepted, sent on to the public hearing. In addition to the public hearing minutes, you can also see in the minutes from last month's meeting, there were significant comments on this project. I think there was some discussion about the city, there was a request at the last meeting, thought it would be good to have a letter of support from the city, and the city did indicate, they've approved this project through site plan review, and, it fits within the zoning. They'd like to see the project down there, but it is solely the IDA's authority to deliver an incentive, and the IDA does have the authority to do that. In terms of the return on investment memo, you might have read through, and I made some changes to their pro forma. The project essentially does not cash flow in the first couple of years. There have been some discussion with the developer about reducing their developer fee to cover some of those overruns, because expenses need to be paid during those first couple of years. I have a couple of things that I'd like to throw out there just from some of the comments
Heather?
that were received, but I don't know if you want me to do that.
I'd just like to get the resolution on the floor, and then we could have discussion.
Okay.
Could I get a motion to put this authorizing resolution on the floor? Jeff moves.
I can second. Oh, no, I can't second. Oh, whatever.
No, you can second.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Mike Ziegler seconds. All right. So motion's on the floor. Heather, you had some additional comments?
Sure. there were some comments about using the IDA incentive as leverage, essentially to cover their investment in the project. The IDA does not provide a direct financial benefit. They don't hand out cash to a developer. So that equity investment does need to come into the project at the beginning. And the way that a developer gets paid over time is through revenue from the project. So if there is no revenue from the project, the developer does not get paid back. So you can see in the ROI member that the cash flow for distribution, their return on investment is below zero the first couple of years. It is very small in the first 10 years. The upfront equity that is paid into this project, they will not get a return on that for over 20 years, the return of that initial upfront equity. There were some comments about don't let them sell it and transfer the incentive. Just a reminder to the IDA that any transfer of incentive, if there were a sale, they would have to come to the IDA and ask for a continuance of the existing incentive, but it's not a given. And as I've been telling applicants, particularly in the residential and the downtown sort of mixed-use projects, not to expect that would likely happen in a scenario in the future. So I just wanted to clear that piece up, as well as, there were some comments about the MRB group's cost-benefit analysis that was presented. It's a multiplier. It's not inaccurate. It's just based on the information that's provided. Usually the numbers are pretty similar to what a developer is saying in terms of the number of construction jobs or local spending, but sometimes they tend to vary, and it's just a multiplier. It's based on the assumptions that are used. Any reputable company that does economic impact analysis will identify that, it is just a multiplier. So it's not in any way exact, but it's a way of sort of saying, this is what we think the direct, the indirect jobs, payroll spending, local spending may be. And, it's based in numbers and economics and all of that. So I wanted to sort of clarify that there will not be a modification to that benefit analysis. The project agreement does capture everything that's in the application, so there's no negotiation on what that final project agreement would be. The attorneys develop that based on what is in the application or anything that the IDA has requested and approved in an authorizing resolution. So nothing additional would be negotiated with the applicant. And there were comments about, ensuring that supplies are purchased locally. If you're an electrical contractor and you're doing a $10 million project, you're likely not buying supplies locally at Home Depot. That's just the reality of the situation. Our application does request that developers, that anyone who's signing the application, that they rely on local suppliers and local labor to the extent that they can. I wanted to reiterate that we do have a local construction labor policy, so there will be a requirement that they comply with that 75% local labor. And just a reminder from the cost-benefit memo and analysis from the last project, this applicant has agreed to meet the next level of the city's green building code. They do not need to, so there is a little bit additional incentive in order to incentivize them to do that. They have certainly met the financial need requirement, which was updated by this body about a year and a half ago. So the other community benefits, there is going to be at closing a $715,000 payment into the Community Housing Development Fund that would support affordable housing, in addition to the projected construction jobs. And, you know, there is a need for market rate housing in this community. And while the last market or housing needs assessment was completed in 2016, there is a move to update at least the city piece by the city. However, we've seen in each project that has recently opened that are market rate projects, they've been full before they even opened. So, you know, the fact that these projects are still filling up as they're opened indicates that there currently still exists demand for market rate and above market housing units. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Questions, comments from members? John.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the developer if there was any chance of adding some affordable housing units.
We did look at that pretty extensively and just felt like it just didn't make sense for the development. You know, we're paying $715,000, I think, into the Affordable Housing Fund, which is, you know, going to go towards building out, you know, affordable housing developments. We are, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we're talking with a national developer. You know, we have an agreement with them to do a joint venture deal where we're going to be building an affordable housing building in the neighborhood. And that just kind of felt like it made more sense to have a standalone building. So we did really look at it extensively. We decided to kind of, you know, not go in that direction, so.
Yeah. Mike.
So I have two questions. You had just mentioned this other project. Is there any kind of timeline on that? I thought that was more of a mid-level, because there's some affordable housing there now, not yours, but somebody else's. And then you're building this market rate, and then you had talked about another project too in that same neighborhood.
Yeah, so there's an existing, the Vecino Group did a project that's there right now, which was a 4%. We're looking at doing a 4%. We've already had like preliminary talks with Lisa Nicholas for this project, so it's something that is, you know, actively in the works.
My other question was, we had talked a little bit about, you know, the project down by the waterfront there, that they had added like a public promenade and things like that for public use. And you had said that you were kind of thinking along those lines on something, but I didn't know if you had progressed with that thinking at all, or.
Are you talking about the existing affordable housing building that's down there having a promenade?
No, I'm talking about the ones over by all the hospital buildings and that. Not in this area. It's down the lake shore, but for this specific area, there's like a trail and things like that. I didn't know if you were considering any public amenities down there.
Yeah, so the city received a grant to do a pedestrian bridge that's actually borders you know, this property and connects the Black Diamond Trail. But as far as waterfront access, we don't have, there's something with, oh man, I forget which government agency owns it. I don't know if it would be the
Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, so we in the city, they looked into this. This is actually something that was addressed during like seeker review, because people in the community came out and said, hey, we want to see a promenade. And the city basically said that that's not even a possibility, just because the lack of actual land that's available. So as far as this specific project goes, you know, we're not going to do that. The city does own a small piece of land, which we've, you know, talked to them about creating some sort of park down there, which would be really nice. I mean, right now it's an encampment, but yeah, I mean, we're looking into potential grants to be able to, you know, hopefully develop that into a park, but that's not part of this specific project.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I guess I'll take a turn. Or John? No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I think this is a great project. I really want to see it built. At the same time, I'm struggling with basically, like, this is outside of our policy. You know, I think we're looking for some kind of a sense from the city that they wanted to encourage us to grant the abatement anyway, and I think that it would be generous to describe what we got from Laura as a letter of support. I think that Laura very carefully stated the facts that the project can proceed and has been approved, but certainly, we haven't seen anything from the city that indicates that they think we should pass this abatement. Absent that and, other significant public benefits, as Mike was kind of digging at, I cannot see my way to supporting this project right now. So, okay. Sorry to say that. I think it's a great project, and I think I want to see it built, but I don't see it.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, Todd, I'm in line with John there too with that. I mean, my office is down there in that area too, and I would love to see that. I'd love to see that. I think that's going to help clean up the area down there immensely. But the same thing, being outside the CTAP area, I have a big problem with, because I'm just worried if, what's the sense of having policies and rules if we don't stick to them? And then when you're outside of that, it just kind of, I don't know, I got big concerns on that too myself.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I mean, what I would say to that is, I mean, we're like 2 blocks away from the CTAP district. We're not like way up on West Hill where it seems like out of context. I mean, if you look at what's existing there, what's existing in the neighboring neighborhoods, to me feels very much in context of like the comprehensive plan of what the city's looking to do. And there will never be housing down there that's not affordable. And there is residual impacts on the community, because right now you have this, affordable housing building that's on an island, and it's very isolated, and having additional people down there that creates more diversity. And there is diversity within market rate, right? Like there's different types of diversity outside of income, and creating more density down there creates a safer neighborhood. It actually starts to build out a neighborhood. And without having some sort of abatement, it's never going to happen. And it's going to sit a vacant site for the next 20, 30 years. So I think there is massive community, benefits to actually allowing or helping to allow additional housing to be built down there.
I guess I'll jump in and take a turn. Yeah, I'm going to support the resolution. And yeah, I wish that the city came forward with a little bit more in their letter. I think that letter reflects a real internal struggle and an inability to articulate what is the city plan for this area. The art house, is, I think, a really good thing. It hasn't been executed as well as we could have hoped. I think it's getting better, but leaving it by itself, you really have a prairie. And my concern is it's not going to significantly get to the next level without further development around it. This project would make it a mixed, income neighborhood, which I think is really good. It will anchor where that pedestrian bridge is coming over the inlet. It would provide housing in walkable distance to a grocery store, and really start to build out a new neighborhood in the city in one of the last few areas that can happen. We are the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency. I always like to proceed with the clear support of the local municipality, but it is our decision, and that's how it's set up. And in an instance where it's not really clear what the local government voice is, which I think that's what this letter represents, I think it is up to us to analyze what is the highest and best use here, what is in the public interest. Having market rate housing built there, I believe will help. I think Peter Whizaker's comment that 2016 is just too old, I think he's right. I'm very happy to hear there's an attempt to bring that forward and get a more current assessment of what our housing needs are, because they have to have changed since 2016. At the same time, as Heather said, everything that gets built gets filled, and that's at the affordable level. It's certainly at the market rate level. If we were able to really get workforce housing built, I'm sure that would be filled as well. So I I don't have a lot of concerns that this won't get rented out. I think it will. I like the energy impacts of having new, highly efficient housing. We need that. And this will improve all sorts of other related things, such as justifying bus routes through that neighborhood, and it just builds on itself. I think this is a good project, and I will support it. Jeff, and then John.
So I would say that this feels like it's a great project. Todd, it seems like it's a really tough project from a financial perspective, from a kind of location perspective and what's there now. So I give you a lot of credit for taking that risk and kind of sticking the stake in the ground to really not be the first one. Obviously, we've got the affordable housing that's in there, but really being the first one for market rate and kind of starting to develop that area more. And obviously, it feels like it's a little bit tied into your second project, which would bring affordable housing to it. So it feels like you're starting to build out the neighborhood there, which needs it. If you've driven by, obviously you've driven by, but I've driven by there as in anticipation of this vote a lot more and to understand what's going down there. And I just go back to, I give you a lot of credit for taking the risk because that's a tough place right now. So I will support that for a lot of what Rich has said. Obviously, the CTAP certainly is an issue. I wish the mayor had come out a little bit more in support, but I feel like it's close enough where I'm comfortable. That's what we do as a board. We're voting here on different items, so I will support it for a lot of those reasons.
John.
I guess I just want to address one of the things you said, Rich, was that there was an implication that I heard in your comments that it was not clear what the city's perspective was, and I think that that's actually not the case. This area was intentionally removed from the incentive district by the city when they last amended those boundaries, and then again in September of 2020, a proposal was presented to PEDC to expand the boundary to include this area, and again, it was not done. And I think that there has been a clear statement from the city that this particular zone is not to be included in the incentive program from their perspective. And I just without some statement of support indicating why this project is different, I think it would be actually somewhat irresponsible of us to pass this abatement.
Yeah, you might be right, John. And I didn't mean to say that there was some question of whether it was in CTAP or not. It's not. I guess my sense of the ambivalence at the city is that I'm hearing different people saying different things about the importance of this, and that they rezoned this area to allow this residential development and approve the project all the way through to say you can build this.
Sure, and they did the same thing in College Town, and there's a reason that we're not incentivizing those projects, right? And I think that there's these incentives are targeted for a reason. They were explicitly not targeted with multiple passes, at which point they could have targeted them and chose not to.
Yeah,
and so
you're right.
That is compelling from my perspective.
You're right.
And for a lot of this is the kind of development we want to see. It is a challenging neighborhood. It's a great project. There's so many reasons to support it. And yet, the city has expressed their preference multiple times, including in not actually sending us a letter of support. They did not send us a letter of support. They sent us a statement that the project exists. And so, I think that that's a pretty clear message. I think we should listen. I think it's incumbent upon us. We've seen blowback from local municipalities when we have not listened. So I think that is important.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
I mean, I can't speak for the mayor, but I would assume if they adamantly did not want this area in the CTAP, they would say, hey, look, guys, we deliberately didn't put this in the CTAP. We do not want to support this. I would also say that it's really important, context is everything. And if you go back and you look at the meeting minutes and the conversations that happened of why the city didn't include this in the CTAP, it was because the majority of Cherry Street is industrial. And actually just south of our site, like if you go south to Cecil Malone, you can't do housing there. And the conversations were, oh, we don't need to provide tax abatements because if someone's doing industrial, it automatically qualifies. So I think some things got lost in translation, and they weren't thinking about housing when they talked about doing that. And like that, it was very clear based on a lot of those conversations. So and you know, I can't speak for anyone, but I personally don't think that it was like in context of like what we're specifically trying to develop here, which is housing.
But then, I mean, why have you not brought us a letter of support from George or Cynthia explaining that, well, like, you know, they want to see this in their district for all these reasons, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I mean,
I've never seen George or Cynthia support any sort of density, like in general. Like,
they came to our last meeting to support, George came and Cynthia wrote a letter in support of the last project that was outside of our zone that was in their district.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that, you know, if you want to bring this back in another month with, you know, some more of that and maybe, you know, addressing some of Mike's concerns and other things, I could see supporting it. But I think that absent that, we do have a clear message from the city.
Hey, Shauna.
Yeah, I would just, like John mentioned, we did approve a project last meeting that was out of the CTAP. I actually really like this project. I think that it would provide some balance in that area that is much needed. I would like to see there's some affordable housing, 10%. You'd get my vote. So ponder that. Maybe we take it up. I would propose us taking this up in our next meeting, because I would also like to see if there's support letters from George and Cynthia, and they might as well. I mean, I think they would, you know, my guess is that they probably will be in support of this. So
I guess my concern is that the financing goes completely bonkers when you try to add market rate and affordable in the same project. There should be a mechanism to do it, but we've heard this again and again that it just, I don't know. Yeah, Heather, did you have something?
I can add a little bit. I was in those discussions with the PEDC at the Common Council and the Common Council meeting when, you know, they had rezoned the waterfront inlet island and the Cherry Street district to allow for housing. And there was discussion at PEDC, and there was a determination that on that side of Cherry Street where it had been upzoned for housing, that now that it had been zoned to include housing, there was an assumption that developers would be able to afford to build down there. The Common Council, the BZA, the site plan review process, they are not trained, nor are they very frankly versed in, you know, the financial income and expense properties of a project and how one generates revenue. And not to criticize, it's just not the thing that they do. When you do site plan review, you don't look at the financial feasibility of a project. And I am telling you that even if you had a third party review the financials on this project, it's very likely that as it's written today, it may not be financed by a bank because the costs are higher on the construction, and they will not be able to cover their expenses over the first at least 20 years of this project. No developer would invest in a project like this if there were not some sort of return. We appreciate that you want to build in our community, I think, Todd, to some degree, given that situation. But the Common Council wouldn't have that information. And I do know, having conversations with George McGonigal, he did not think that the city should have rezoned any of Cherry Street for residential. He will never support residential development in that area. He is one voice on Common Council, and he lost that vote on upzoning it and zoning it to include residential and have a new neighborhood down there. So that's just providing a little bit of the flavor to that discussion.
Okay. Faith.
I might as well, right? I think that what I would have liked to have seen is that maybe Todd going to council and explaining that, and maybe a letter from council. I think you're right. It is one, George is one voice, right? Cynthia's the other, whatever. in this area, but I do think that there's a lot of confusion, warranted, not warranted, however that is, having been in those conversations. I think that there is, would like to see, some kind of, community, I'm trying to think of the right word, that's the thing that keeps coming up with when we meet and talk about these things is, how is this benefiting the community? What's the benefit to the community? And I think that you can make a good argument, but I don't think that that argument has necessarily been made to the correct people. And I'm with, Shauna. I just wonder if we could table it. I mean, of course, I won't be here, so I'm sorry.
See y'all later. You guys.
I know. But I do think that there's more information from the city that I think we could use in order to push this project forward. I think it's a great project. But I want that city, I need the city to have that buy-in.
Yeah.
Can I ask a procedural question here? If we reject this application today or fail to pass this resolution, does the application have to start all over again if it comes back up, or can it, having already gone through a public hearing, come back with some minor modifications at a future meeting?
My recommendation would be that if there are changes, whether that be minor or what, to the application, that we get a new application, have everything recertified.
Redo the public hearing, et cetera.
And then go through accordingly, because then to the extent, again, if there are changes to the scope of the project and then the numbers change a little bit, we want to make sure that, the public hearing is accurate, that whatever we're presenting to the public.
Considering that, can we call the question?
Well, we have a resolution on the floor. Do we want to vote on that?
We could vote.
We could what you could do is move to table it till next month.
I think that what I'm hearing from the body at large is like, we're probably not going to approve this as written, that we would want to see changes to the application to make it something that we could support. And so, considering the mechanics of that, it's coming back around again anyway, we might as well go ahead and vote now. But I'm just one voice.
I don't know. Procedurally, is it better to vote on it now or to table it and wait for an amendment?
You can certainly table it. That's well within the board's discretion.
I guess I'd prefer if we just table it. Let's let more information come, because it might be it's the same proposal, but with different information, more supplemented information would get us where we want to go. But it might be that it has to be a new application, but that would allow the developer to proceed either way. Mike, I see your hand.
If you were going to move to table it, I would just second that table motion.
All right. Well, I would rather not move it if somebody else would move to table. Is that you, Faith?
Oh, I can.
Okay. And Mike seconds? Okay. Are we ready to vote on a motion to table? Okay. Mike? Yes?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
No.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll table that. We'll proceed from here. Maybe we'll get the same application or presentation of a new one at our January meeting. And Faith has escaped. Okay, next item of business, Carpenter Park Mixed Use Pilot Amendment. And I believe we're on page 23.
Yeah, so we've got Andrew Bodaways via Zoom today from the development team. You have a letter requesting the modification in your agenda packet. We do our best effort. We talk to Jay Franklin. We do our absolutely best effort to estimate what the land value and then what the future improvement value would be. The abatement is based off of that fixed land value and the future improvement. In this case, our estimate was widely off. There were several tax parcels involved. There were several different building projects. And so our estimate was that the land value would be $2,143,691. The assessment department has now actually assessed this. It's on one tax parcel, and the land value is only $1.5 million. So he was asked to pay under pilot the first year, taxes that were significantly more than what he would have paid if it were not under pilot. And so, it was really just, we did the best that we could. It's a little bit off, so they're asking that we actually go back and reestablish what that land value is to be concurrent with the actual assessment.
Hey, John?
My colleagues will recall that this is part of a 3-parcel abatement, and I think that it is, I can't evaluate this at all because I don't see the rest of the parcels. As I understand it, there was one big land acquisition that bought all of it. It was subdivided, and then 2 of the parcels have since been developed, and I think that we need to see a detailed breakdown of how the values were associated with all of the parcels and how the value was originally calculated. I understand that it was subject to a highly competitive sale condition, so its sale price should be the total value that we're basing the original value of the abatement on. And I'm concerned that if we do this, we're actually abating existing taxes that we'd be knocking down the gross valuation across the whole thing. Without some clear evidence to the contrary, I basically don't think we have enough information to act on this today. And I'd like to see it actually provided in writing with a full breakdown across all of the parcels.
I can certainly do that.
Before we actually consider it for a vote. And as such, I would like to move to table this item to next.
Well, we haven't moved it, so
I know.
we haven't taken it up yet.
I'd like to table the agenda item. I think that that's procedurally valid.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to table this, second by Todd. Discussion. Shauna?
Yeah, I guess the one question I have is that would we also come back if it went the other way and the property was valued at more than the assessed value? Would we come back and collect the abatement dollars that we initially collected?
In neither case would we be collecting the abatement dollars.
You see what I'm saying? I'm just wondering if if the assessed value is actually less than what we thought it was initially, if it's the other way around and the assessor comes out and says, it's not 2 million, it's actually 4 million, would there be a conversation then about the different amount of tax abatements that would have been allotted?
So the abatement would apply to everything above that base land value. So once the abatement kicked in, it would be the actual value. So there wouldn't be anything to adjust. But in this case, they're still under construction, and so with that, in that first sort of during construction is where this sort of critically impacts. And so they're paying more than what they had anticipated on and the value is actually less.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I'd make a comment that for lots of policy reasons, we accept the findings of our assessment department. And so I'm uncomfortable trying to question whether this is a reasonable assessment or not. But I guess I don't have any problem with waiting a month and getting more information.
We probably should have some kind of statement of the assessor's office. I mean, it's not always the case that they pay careful attention to the values that they apply to parcels that aren't actually subject to regular tax, right? Like Cornell's valuations are questionable at best. And nobody cares because there's no taxes on any of those valuations. So
yeah, I mean, just as a legislator, I'm uncomfortable getting involved in that discussion because the assessor works for us.
My understanding, you know, as the land value increases, they're paying property tax on that. Like if the land value increases and they're under abatement, everything is abated above that base value, or it's phased in. If, you know, they're paying 80%, it's 80% of the taxes on everything above that 1.5 million. If they're, even if the land value increases over the term of the abatement, they're paying actual taxes, a percentage of the taxes based on the assessor's value. It's just during construction that the value is sort of, our intention is to hold the value. This is the only county in New York State that will actually reassess during construction and significantly increase land values and improvement values. And so it drastically reduces the IDA's incentive unintentionally. And so this is how we, you know, have historically tried to sort of accommodate for projects that will be under construction over multiple tax years.
Just to be clear, like I can see my way to supporting this, but I just need a lot more information to do that.
I understand.
want to see more information from the assessor's office too.
So why don't we call the vote on tabling this and we'll address it next month, if that's ready. Any further comment? Mike? No? Can't tell.
No.
I couldn't hear.
No comments.
No? This is the vote.
Sorry, yes. I thought you were asking if there's any more comments. I'm like, no more.
This is to table. Okay, Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff? Yes. Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Sorry about that, Mike. I wasn't clear. Okay. So we'll consider that next month. Next up is the Knickerbocker Bed Company sales tax exemption. And do we have somebody here from Knickerbocker? Oh, we do.
I do. I have Russ Robinson from La Chase, the general contractor, Jody Denman, who is the CFO at Knickerbocker. And thank you, Cameron. I think he has some handouts. What you have in your packet is a resolution as well as a letter requesting an increase in sales tax incentive. The good news is that Knickerbocker has spent the $10 million that they said they were going to spend in their application. Richard and his team have determined that they want to that they have done more work than they had anticipated. And so he had authorized Russ and his group at La Chase to come back and on his behalf ask for an increase in that sales tax amount. So they have done that. I've also had some additional conversations with Jody, who's newly on board at Knickerbocker, and some of those numbers in the request from La Chase don't really take into account some additional equipment and installation costs that La Chase wouldn't really know about because they're in charge of really just the construction, the shell piece. So I'm wondering if today you might consider increasing that request on the sales tax by another $100,000, which would be about $1,250,000 in additional spending. And I have...
I thought it was a $150,000 increase.
So their request was for an additional $1,875,000 in spending, which would be $150,000. If you would add to that another $100,000 in sales tax incentive for a total of $250,000. I have that Russ has shared with me a short video. There's no sound. It just shows sort of gives you a sense of what's going on in the building. I was actually there last week and toured the facility, got an opportunity to meet several of the new employees. Their pledge was that they would create 85 jobs within 3 years. They started hiring about 4 months ago, and they've got over 80 employees today. And they're likely going to be at, what did you say to me, Jody? You said
20 to 30 more add in Q1 of 2023.
And you'll be up to 90 by right after Christmas. So they're on a pretty good pace in terms of hiring, and I will tell you they're not fully set up yet, and they don't have all their lines there yet.
You said there's a video?
There is. I'm just...
All right.
It's been an impressive year, so thank you.
And my share screen is not showing the video. I'll let you talk.
Okay.
And if I can get it up, I will.
Some of the photos you'll see on the video are in the handout below you. And we come into an empty shell a year ago. We walked up through and with Mr. Polvoy. Richard is a great company, great person, and he had a vision that he didn't quite know was going to reach into all this, I think. We started at like a $2 million budget, and to date we're at $9 million. We've spent over almost $9 million in this last year. A lot of it's an increase if you all go to the grocery store. Everything's a lot more, but a lot more is he's excited to get here, and like the employees, he's accelerated this tremendously. Everything that you'll see from the photos and there, it's not your typical manufacturing. They had put in a lunchroom that you would see at a convention center. The restrooms, we ended up doing all new plumbing, everything through, but you'll see tile and black backlit mirrors, and they have lockers with individual dressing places for privacy to dress, and there's, we put in a nursing station, and that's just that part. We went through and coated probably 50% of the floors with epoxy coating, put 10 new machines in, brand new machines, did all the change the chillers, went to 2 new chillers, put 4 energy efficient heat pumps in, so we changed all the heating systems, so now we're on a more energy efficient heat pump system, so that was never in the plan. All new LED lighting inside and out. So he's doing this right, and it's going to be an investment for a long time. So we had a drone go through the building. So we had, what is it, about a 4-foot wide drone that we flew through and through the whole thing. Cameron took the 2 hours of video and got it down to about 2 minutes so you could walk through the building.
I can't get it to load. I love technology when it works, but I can share the link with everybody. It's about a 52 megabyte file, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it is. And so we've separated, we call it building 1, 2, and 3. Building 2 is all the manufacturing. They do injection mold and extrusion. So they do 2. We'll be bringing the steel up part next. That'll be building 1, where they'd actually punch all the steel and do all that. But right now it's coming from there where we're making that transition. And they build everything on site in building 2 right now. Building 3 right now ends up being storage, but that will be all the assembly, which we're doing in building 2. We'll be moving that next month. We also brought up, which wasn't in the original plan, was thermal set. It's another plastic there. So we took the old paper room, which is 20,000 square feet, and put a whole manufacturing part in there, and that's almost up and running. So fast and furious.
Yes.
So we do appreciate you guys' help. Without that, it wouldn't. So appreciate that.
Okay. Let's get some questions. John.
I'm going to go ahead and actually just move our original. The memo is written in our agenda for the $150,000 expansion in the savings limit. And then I'm going to ask the question of if there's this extra $100,000 we're looking for, is there a timing issue here? Like, why is this coming up as a verbal suggestion on the floor rather than something written in our agenda?
Well, I suggested rather than not coming back 2 months from now or 3 months from now, that we do it all at once.
I mean, personally, I'd much rather see us do it with something written that we can actually consider and look at rather than have us do it as sort of a haphazard voice vote on the floor. I think this is something that we fall into more often than I'd like to see. So I wouldn't be able to support that at this time, and I'd much rather vote for it in a few months and, see us bring it forward as some kind of documentation that makes sense. So anyway, just my 2 cents.
Hold on 1 second, John. Why don't we, the video's running.
I got it to work.
Yeah.
It takes a minute to download. So this is a corridor from the tool room. Where you're going in now is an impressive tool room. We put an overhead double gantry crane in 5-ton that services that. This used to be a mezzanine. We took out 60 feet of that and made this room bigger to do that. There's 5 CNC machines in there. They do all the molds and stuff. You'll see a mold in the video that they're putting in. But this used to be, that's building 3 there where we're doing the majority of the warehouse. All those beds are ready to be shipped. And this is the thermal set room. That was the old paper room. And we go back outside. And we've done a lot of site work on the side of by Duke there, where there used to be a water issue. So we opened that drainage back up and made that better. This is the front of the building. We painted that. Put new siding panels on that were all damaged. We coated the roof in some sections. Like I said, new chillers. Took the old RTO unit off that was out front. Maintain that, bettered the fire loop road. That's the fire loop road that we've done through there. Do some landscaping and water there. And the units, you'll see a better shot. That's one of the 4 heat pumps that we put in on that side. All new loading dock doors, all new man doors around the building. So just trying to make it as energy efficient as we can and sustainability.
All right, so the motion on the floor as moved by John is to approve at the 150. Is there a second for that? Yes.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm just moving what's in the agenda.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. All right, so that's second. So let's go to.
I also have some questions.
Sure, but if anybody else, or John, go ahead.
So you mentioned these heat pumps. Is the building now natural gas free, or is there still natural gas used?
There's still natural gas backup. So we've got some Resner heaters, and there's some heaters on the doors to wash the overhead doors when they open. So yeah, so it's backup mostly.
Is there natural gas used for any process?
No.
All right. Shauna.
Yeah, I actually, I think this project is great, and I've thought that it's been great ever since it came to our community. I think it provides some diversity that we need in Tompkins County. As far as manufacturing, you've done it right. I think you've really invested in the building, and I really do appreciate the fact that you're paying your employees a fair wage, and so I will happily support this.
I'd like to reiterate what Shauna said too. I think this is a textbook case of how IDAs work as far as this arrangement, you know, with Knickerbocker coming in here and bringing all these jobs is amazing. You know, bringing all the jobs they brought here and then all the jobs they've created here, but the construction end too, it's phenomenal. And then they've definitely gone above and beyond what they said to originally, which I think is needs to be applauded. Thank you.
I had a question just on hiring. Are you able to find the skill levels you're looking for?
We are. We actually have not had to post a job. Part of that was timing because Voyant went out of business in Cortland and another company that I'm not as familiar with, so we've been able to recruit that way. I think the fact that we're starting people at $22 an hour and that Richmond is paying full benefits so that employees do not have to contribute to health, dental, vision, pays for all their breaks. There are a lot of perks there, but it's important to him that people like to work there and that he maintains, you know, so there's not much turnover. So I think a lot of it's been word of mouth. We've been very lucky.
Okay. I guess I'd make a comment. I would be prepared to vote on the 250 today, but I take John's point that this is what is in the public agenda. This is what, you know, if somebody was going to object, they would not have known otherwise. So I'm comfortable voting for the 150, but if you need more, I would support it when you come back. John.
Yeah, and just to be clear on that, I agree actually wholeheartedly. I think this is a fantastic project. I think everything you're doing is great, and I would like to support you more. But I see a timing issue here of like, this is going to expire in 2 weeks. So we can't ask you to come back, you know, for the remainder of the construction portion. It seems like the rest of it could come back with a budget and a written request, which would allow us to follow our process more closely. So I just request that we do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, are we ready to vote? Yeah. Mike?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support.
Have a good holiday. Okay. All right, next item is the 2023 Memorandum of Understanding, IAED and TCIDA. And Heather, do you want to introduce that?
Sure. This is our annual Memorandum of Understanding for IAED to provide administrative services and economic development services on behalf of the county. The IDA does fund a portion of those services. We have requested a 2% increase over last year. And I've also included in there a copy of our 2023 work plan, which was developed in conjunction with my team, our board, the planning committee of our board, and input from the Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee of the county legislature.
Okay.
Just that's, do I have a conflict here since I sit on the IAED board? Okay.
I don't think it's unlikely to pass, Jeff. You're good.
Okay.
Yep.
I was going to ask if somebody would move to put it on the floor. Is that what you're doing?
Sure.
Okay. So move. Todd seconds. Okay. Comments?
My annual, is this the same as last year, other than the 2% increase?
I might have caught a couple of typos, and I think there's still one typo in there. But
we'll keep it for posterity. You can get it next year.
I did read it. I've picked out a typo.
Okay. Other comments? Are we ready to vote? Mike?
Yes. Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous with one abstention. Okay. We then have the TCIDA Ethics and Conflict of Interest Policy. Do you want to introduce that, Heather?
This comes to you from the Governance Committee. We did have a full review done by an attorney at Harris Beach of all of our policies and procedures, and he determined that all of our policies and procedures were in line with state regulations. He also did, except for the the Code of Ethics and policy. So he prepared modifications to our existing policy that the Governance Committee reviewed and is recommending this policy. It does meet all of the state regulations in terms of conflict of interest and Code of Ethics. In addition to Bob Ryan at Harris Beach looking at all of our policies and procedures, he also looked at our website and our compliance with all the state regulations around the documentation on our website. The only thing he could find was that there was a missing link for the state general municipal law that created public authorities in 1973. So we have fixed that link. Kudos to Ina and a lot of the work that she does to make sure that we're in compliance and we're putting all those things on the website that we're required to by the state. So the policy is in the agenda packet if anyone had any questions.
Okay. Is that to put it on the floor? Thank you, John. Do I have a second? Faith seconds. Thank you. Okay. Discussion? John?
So this policy creates the position of ethics officer, which, as I understand it, needs to be an officer, director, or employee of the agency, which is really just officer or director because we have no employees, right? So, I mean, one of us is going to have to be the ethics officer. Is that something that we're going to do today, too?
That was something that we discussed at the governance committee, and they suggested that I, in my capacity as administrative director, act as the ethics officer.
It doesn't have to be that way if you...
Is that actually, I mean, so...
I'm happy to pass
officer, director, employee, do we need to actually specify in the policy that it can be a subcontractor? The policy states that the board shall designate an officer, director, or employee. We have no employees. We have a subcontractor.
I'm the administrative. I'm appointed by the IDA as the administrative director.
Administrative director, right. So that's not like board of directors director. That includes. Okay, cool.
Further discussion? Okay, ready to vote? Go to Mike.
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Should we separately, since it wasn't actually on the agenda, move to appoint Heather to that position?
We certainly can.
I'll do that.
Thank you. Do a second? Faith seconds? Okay. Further discussion? Are we ready to vote? Okay. Mike?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd? Yes. Chair votes yes. Okay. And I do not have a chair's report. Staff report, 2022 board self-evaluation. Heather?
Ina sent everyone a board self-evaluation. She also left a copy on your desk if you have not already filled it out. Do not leave without filling it out and handing it back to her. It's like herding cats, particularly for those of you that will be leaving the IDA after this meeting. But this is a requirement of PAAA that we fill this form, that all board members fill this form out and do the self-evaluation every year. So please just take a couple of minutes.
I would comment on that I did that today and looked at the questions and I felt comfortable answering them. That, you know, even when we've disagreed, I think we've certainly taken the time and delayed votes when necessary to make sure we're comfortable that everybody's been heard and able to vote. So I've been happy about that. Anyway, I didn't have any reservations about answering New York State's questions there. So thank you, everybody.
So we have dusted off and updated our annual reporting form letters. Always opportunity for improvement. So we made a couple of changes, sent those out to all of our projects. We have about 52 active projects, alerting them that they will need to be reporting on their projects early in the new year and what those reporting requirements and deadlines are. So we'll be following up after the new year on that. Be very kind to Ina, January, February, into March, as she does all of the data collection and reporting for Paris. I want to thank Faith for her year on the IDA. As everyone's aware, she's left her position as Chief of Staff at the City of Ithaca. Thank you so much for the time that you gave to our organization over the course of the year. The January meeting is scheduled for January 11th. I'll be working with Rich and the IDA to change the date of that meeting. There are some conflicts for us on our end, so look for doodle polls or other correspondence from us there. That's it.
Questions for Executive Director? Okay. We have minutes from November 9th, 2022. Could I get a motion to put those on the floor? Jeff moves, Todd seconds. Thank you. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Call the roll. Mike?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And I believe that completes the business of the IDA. We do have an agenda for the Development Corporation. If I could get a motion to adjourn the IDA.
So moved.
Second? And I'm just going to go, all in favor? You're there?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation for December 14th, 2022. Welcome. We've had privilege of the floor for the IDA. I don't see anybody wishing to speak, and I don't have any blue cards or letters. So any additions to the agenda? Changes? No? Okay. We have the 2023 Memorandum of Understanding, IAED and TCDC approval. And could I get a motion to put that on the floor? Todd moves, Shauna seconds. Heather, do you want to introduce that?
This is the same as the Memorandum of Understanding with the IDA. However, the IDA fund balance funds the financial piece, and this MOU does not.
Questions or comments?
So same as last year, so I can type this?
I've got a conflict as well.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Yeah. Mike?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeff?
I'll abstain.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. I do not have a chair's report. Staff report. Is there anything?
No.
Okay. We have minutes of November 9th, 2022. Could I get a motion to put those on the floor? Todd moves. Shauna seconds. Okay. Questions or comments on the minutes? I'll call the roll. Mike?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
John?
Oh, yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right. Any other business to come before the Development Corporation? And I would echo our thanks to Faith. Thank you for participating and helping us. And I hope you have a good finish to your year at the city and on to other things. Any other business or anybody before we adjourn? I hope everybody has a good holiday. And thank you for everybody for your work this year. So,
Thanks, Rich.
okay. Motion to adjourn? All those in favor? We're adjourned.